Dear students, today we shall discuss on metaphysical poetry prescribed in your syllabus. For God's sake, hold thy tongue and let me love. By the end of 16th and beginning of 17th century, the great Elizabethan poetry had exhausted itself. Signs of decadence were visible everywhere. Poetry became conventional and artificial. There was little that was original and remarkable. So there was a revolt against it. In the words of Mr. C.S. Lewis, metaphysicism in poetry is the fruit of Renaissance tree becoming overripe. The leaders of this revolt. The leaders of this revolt were Ben Jonson and John Donne. Both of them were great personalities who attracted followers and founded new school in the realm of poetry. Mr. Ben Jonson founded the classical school which reached its full flowering in the poetry of Dryden and Pope. John Donne founded the metaphysical school of poetry. Besides John Donne, other famous metaphysical poets are George Herbert, Richard Henry Vaughan, and Abraham Cowley. The term metaphysical, it was Dryden who first used the word metaphysical in connection with Donne's poetry. He saw Donne's effects, the metaphysic. Dr. Johnson confirmed the judgment of Dryden, originally the term metaphysical, a term of contempt. Contempt, grana. Dryden and Johnson meant to say that metaphysical poets deviated from naturalness of thoughts and style to novelty and quaintness. Now, main features of metaphysical poetry. The following are the main features of metaphysical poetry. First, display of learning. In the words of Johnson, the metaphysical poets were men of learning, and to show their learning was their whole endeavor. Endeavor means effort, prayas. In metaphysical poetry, we see references to theology, philosophy, and science. The result is that it becomes very difficult for the readers to follow what the poet really wants to say. In the words of Dr. Johnson, our quarrel with the metaphysicals is not that they are learned, but they show their learning just to impress the readers. Second, intellectual poetry. Metaphysical poetry is often intellectual. It makes an appeal to the intellect, not the heart. Metaphysical poets often reflect man's relation with God. Next, conceit. Conceit, vichar. Conceit is a literary term which means makes a comparison. Conceits were used. Conceits were employed by Elizabethan poets and dramatists, but they were for the sake of ornamentation. In the hands of metaphysical poets, conceits have reached absurd limit. Next, religious and mystical elements. Most of the metaphysical poets are also mystic. They write on religion, but they do not alike Saman. Every poet has his own individuality. They believe that spiritual word is the only real word. The things of the world are mere shadows. Herbert is the saint of metaphysical school. His poem, The World, may be regarded as the inspiration behind the immortality ode of Wordsworth. As for example, I saw the eternity the last night like a great thing of pure and endless light. Next, characteristic of metaphysical poetry, their love poetry. In their love poetry, wit and conceit are combined together. Abrupt opening. The metaphysical poets often begin their poem abruptly. And next characteristics, language and versification. In order to show the newness and originality, they use a new vocabulary. They use natural language of men not when they are emotionally excited but when they are engaged in commerce and science. Decline, next point, decline of metaphysical poetry. About the middle of 17th century, there came a change in the taste of people. Metaphysical poetry exhausted itself. It produced more woes and pleasure. Revival of metaphysical poetry. The present century refers that poetry has been revived in the hands of T.S. Eliot. The poetry of Eliot is purely metaphysical. Future of metaphysical poetry. A famous critic, Ranson, says that the future of metaphysical poetry is bright. He remarks, the metaphysical poetry is alone the real poetry. That's enough.